Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the U.S. Discovery and watched the stars through the main viewing screen. The deep space exploration vessel had been traveling for 3 months beyond the edge of known space. His crew of 47 had grown restless during the long journey, but Jake knew they were close to something important. The strange energy readings had started appearing on their sensors 2 weeks ago. The signals came from empty space, but they pulsed with a rhythm that seemed almost alive. Dr. Lisa Park, the ship's chief science officer, had never seen anything like it in her 15 years of studying cosmic phenomena. "Captain, the energy signatures are getting stronger," Tony Blake called out from the navigation console. The young officer had joined the crew only 6 months ago, but he had already proven himself reliable during their journey to the outer rim. "Whatever is out there, we're getting close to it." Jake nodded and walked over to where Dr. Park was studying her instruments. The tall woman with graying hair had been his science officer for 5 years. She rarely showed excitement, but today her eyes were bright with curiosity. "What do you think we're dealing with, Lisa?" Jake asked quietly. "The readings suggest something massive, Jake. The energy patterns are unlike anything in our databases. They seem to be coming from multiple sources, but they're all synchronized." She paused and looked up at him. "It's like they're communicating with each other." Maria Santos, the ship's communications specialist, suddenly turned from her station. The young woman's face was pale with surprise. "Captain, I'm picking up something on long-range communications. It's not from Earth or any of our colonies." "Put it on speaker," Jake ordered. The bridge filled with a sound that made everyone stop what they were doing. It was not quite music and not quite speech, but it carried a weight that seemed to press down on their minds. The sound rose and fell in waves, creating patterns that felt familiar even though none of them had ever heard anything like it before. "Is that a language?" Tony asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Before anyone could answer, the space in front of them began to shimmer. The stars seemed to bend and twist as reality itself appeared to tear open. Jake had seen many strange things during his 20 years in space, but nothing had prepared him for what emerged from that impossible opening. The first ship was enormous, easily 10 times the size of the Discovery. Its surface looked like it was made of living crystal that pulsed with inner light. The crystal formations grew and shifted as they watched, creating new patterns that hurt to look at directly. Behind it came another ship and then another, until a fleet of 12 massive vessels hung in space before them. "My God," Dr. Park whispered. "Jake, the energy readings are off the charts. Each of those ships is generating more power than our entire home fleet." The communications array suddenly activated on its own. Maria tried to regain control, but her instruments refused to respond. The strange music speech grew louder, and then a voice spoke directly into their minds. It was not heard through their ears, but felt through their entire beings. "Children of the Third World, we greet you." The voice was vast and ancient, carrying the weight of millions of years. Jake felt his knees weaken but forced himself to remain standing. Around the bridge, his crew was struggling with the same overwhelming presence. "I am Zephon, prime architect of the first design. We have watched your species grow from the dust of your small world. The time has come for your elevation." Jake found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a croak. "This is Captain Morrison of the Earth ship Discovery." "Who are you? What do you want?" The voice that called itself Zephon seemed amused. "We are the ones who planted the seeds of life in your galaxy long before your son was born. We are the builders of worlds and the shepherds of evolution. You call us many names in your primitive legends. Gods, angels, the first ones. All are correct, though incomplete." Dr. Park managed to activate her recording devices. Her scientific training was taking over despite the fear that gripped her. "Your ships, their technology, it's beyond anything we understand. How long have you existed? Time has little meaning for us, child of knowledge. We have existed since the galaxy was young. We seeded 1,000 worlds with life and watched as civilizations rose and fell. Some grew wise and joined us among the stars. Others destroyed themselves before they could reach their potential." Jake stepped forward, though his legs felt like they were made of lead. "What do you want with humanity?" "You have reached the threshold, young captain. Your species has spread beyond your birth world and touched the void between stars. It is time for you to take your place in the greater order. We have come to guide you through your next evolution." The crystal ships began to move, not toward the Discovery but past it, heading in the direction of Earth. Their massive forms distorted space around them as they traveled, moving faster than should have been possible. "Wait," Jake called out. "You can't just go to Earth. Our people aren't prepared for this." They don't even know you exist. Sifon's mental voice carried what might have been gentle laughter. They will learn, as all children must learn when they grow beyond their need for their parents' protection. We go now to prepare the way for humanity's ascension. Your world will be transformed into something greater than you can imagine. And if we refuse? Jake asked, though he already suspected the answer. Refusal is the choice of the young and foolish. You will understand in time. All species resist at first, but they come to see the wisdom of our guidance. Peace will come to your world, Captain. War, hunger, disease, and death will be things of the past. Is this not what your people have always dreamed of? The crystal ships were already growing smaller in the distance, but their presence still pressed against Jake's mind. He could feel the vast intelligence behind Zephon's words, ancient and patient and utterly certain of its righteousness. Dr. Park was frantically working at her console, trying to analyze the energy signatures the ships had left behind. Jake, their propulsion system, it's like nothing I've ever seen. They're manipulating space-time itself, but the mathematics behind it, there's something familiar about the quantum patterns. Familiar how? Jake asked, grateful to focus on something concrete. I'm not sure yet. The base equations remind me of theoretical work I studied in graduate school, but that's impossible. Those were just thought experiments, mathematical models that could never actually work. Tony Blake looked up from his navigation console with worry in his eyes. Captain, at their current speed, they'll reach Earth in less than 6 hours. Should we try to warn them? Jake stared at the space where the ships had disappeared and felt the weight of impossible responsibility on his shoulders. Humanity was about to meet beings who claimed to be their creators, their gods, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Send the message, Tony. Tell Earth Command what we've seen. Tell them the gods are coming home. 3 months had passed since the architects arrived at Earth. The crystal ships now floated like impossible mountains above every major city on the planet. New York, London, Tokyo, Mumbai, São Paulo. All were shadowed by the massive vessels that hummed with alien energy. Dr. Lisa Park crouched in the abandoned subway tunnel beneath Manhattan and checked her modified scanner for the 3rd time in an hour. The device had been cobbled together from salvaged equipment and black market components. It was crude compared to her old instruments aboard the Discovery, but it was undetectable by architect sensors. Anything new? Asked Colonel Steve Carter, the former Marine who now led their small resistance cell. The man had lost weight over the past months, and his eyes held the hard look of someone who had watched his world change overnight. The same patterns I've been tracking for weeks, Lisa replied, keeping her voice low. Their technology operates on quantum frequencies that shouldn't exist according to our understanding of physics, but the mathematical foundation keeps nagging at me. I've seen these equations before, Steve nodded grimly. Above them, the city had been transformed into something that barely resembled the New York they remembered. The architects had eliminated crime, poverty, and disease within days of their arrival. No one went hungry anymore. No one got sick. No one died from anything other than old age. And even that was becoming rare as the beings began their enhancement programs. But freedom had died with the first dawn after their arrival. Any word from Danny? Lisa asked about their hacker contact. He managed to break into another archive last night, found more references to something called Project Genesis. Whatever it was, the government buried it deep. Steve handed her a datapad with encrypted files. The interesting thing is the dates. All the classified material points to research that was happening in the 2080s. Lisa studied the partial files on the small screen. Names had been blacked out, but she could see fragments of scientific papers and budget allocations for projects with innocent-sounding names that hid massive funding. Look at this budget line. $60 billion for consciousness preservation research. What kind of government program needs that much money? Danny Kim emerged from a side tunnel, his laptop bag slung over his shoulder. The young Korean-American had been a cybersecurity expert before the architects arrived. Now he used his skills to dig through the digital remnants of human independence. I found something big, Danny said, his voice tight with excitement and fear. There's a pattern in the bloodlines. Some humans are immune to their mental conditioning. Not many, maybe 1 in 10,000, but they exist. Immune how? Steve asked. The architects can't read their minds or influence their thoughts. They're like blank spots in whatever network the beings use to monitor us. Danny pulled up a genetic map on his laptop. I've been tracking the families. They all trace back to the same group of people. Scientists and military personnel who worked on classified projects between 2075 and 2090. Lisa felt her pulse quicken. The same time period as Project Genesis. Exactly. But here's the really weird part. Official records from that period are almost completely scrubbed. It's like someone went through history and erased 15 years of human development. Above them, the sound of architect patrols hummed through the subway grating. The beings rarely came below ground, but their human collaborators were everywhere. People who had willingly accepted the new order in exchange for enhanced abilities and extended lifespans. Steve motioned for silence until the patrol passed. We need to find someone who was alive during that time period. Someone who might remember what really happened. I might know someone, Lisa said quietly. Before the Discovery mission, I worked with an old physicist named Dr. Helen Gray. She would have been in her 30s during the 2080s. If she's still alive, she might have answers. Danny's fingers flew over his keyboard. Helen Gray, age 87, currently held at Reconstruction Center 7 in Queens. She's listed as a priority rehabilitation case. What does that mean? Steve asked. It means she's been resisting their conditioning, Lisa said grimly. They keep the stubborn ones in special facilities, trying to break down their mental defenses. The facility that had once been Queens General Hospital was now surrounded by a shimmering energy barrier that made the air itself seem to bend. Architect technology had transformed the building into something that hurt to look at directly. Its geometry following patterns that human minds weren't designed to process. Getting inside had taken 2 weeks of planning. Danny had created false identity cards that fooled the human guards, while Steve had mapped patrol routes and security gaps. Lisa carried medical equipment that she hoped would be enough to help Dr. Gray if they found her. The inside of the facility was worse than the outside. Humans moved through the corridors with the blank expressions of people whose thoughts were no longer their own. Their eyes followed preset patterns, never looking directly at anything that might remind them of their former lives. Dr. Gray was in a room on the 4th floor, sitting by a window that showed only the crystal ships hanging in the sky. She was thin and frail, but her eyes were clear and angry. Lisa Park, she said when she saw them. I wondered if you were still fighting or if you'd given up like the others. Dr. Gray, we need your help. We're trying to understand what happened in the 2080s. There's something called Project Genesis. The old woman's face went white. How do you know that name? We found fragments in classified archives. Please, we think it might be connected to why some people can resist the architects. Dr. Gray looked out the window at the alien ships. I was young then. Brilliant and stupid like all young scientists. We thought we were saving the world. From what? The end of everything. There was a cosmic event heading toward Earth. A dark matter wave that would have sterilized the entire solar system. We had maybe 50 years to prepare, but there was no way to evacuate everyone. Lisa sat down beside the old woman. What did you do? We developed a way to preserve human consciousness in quantum matrices. Upload technology that could survive anything the universe threw at it. The plan was to launch these preserved minds into interdimensional space and bring them back when the danger passed. Steve leaned forward. Did it work? Dr. Gray's laugh was bitter. We thought it did. Volunteers from around the world agreed to have their consciousness uploaded. Scientists, artists, philosophers, the best humanity had to offer. We gave them false memories to help them cope with the transition. Told them they were becoming guardians of the galaxy. False memories? Danny asked. We made them believe they were ancient beings, cosmic entities with the power and responsibility to guide lesser species. It was supposed to be temporary, just until they could return and help rebuild civilization. Lisa felt pieces clicking together in her mind. The volunteers, when were they launched? 93 years ago. We sent them out in quantum substrate carriers that could survive in interdimensional space indefinitely. Dr. Gray turned to look at Lisa with eyes that held terrible understanding. The architects aren't aliens, Dr. Park. They're human minds that forgot what they used to be. Outside the window, the crystal ships pulsed with their alien light, and Lisa realized that humanity was not facing conquest by foreign gods. They were facing the return of their own children, who no longer remembered home. The deep ocean research submarine descended through the darkest waters on Earth. Dr. Lisa Park watched the depth gauge climb past 11,000 meters as they approached the bottom of the Mariana Trench. The coordinates Dr. Gray had given them pointed to a location that officially did not exist on any map. Captain Jake Morrison sat beside her in the cramped vessel. He had escaped from architect detention 3 weeks ago with the help of the Resistance Network. His face still showed the marks of their rehabilitation attempts, but his mind remained his own. "Are you sure about these coordinates?" asked Colonel Steve Carter from the pilot seat. The submarine was designed for deep ocean research, not covert operations, but it was the only vessel they could acquire that would reach the ocean floor undetected. Dr. Gray was certain, Lisa replied, checking her instruments. She said the Genesis facility was built 12 kilometers down, hidden in the deepest part of the ocean where no one would ever think to look. Danny Kim worked frantically on his computers in the back of the submarine. "I'm picking up some kind of artificial structure on sonar. It's massive, easily the size of a city block, but it's been down there so long that sea life has grown all over it." The submarine's lights cut through the absolute darkness of the deep ocean as they approached what looked like a coral reef. But as they got closer, the organic growth couldn't hide the geometric shapes underneath. Metal and concrete structures covered in decades of marine growth stretched out in all directions. There, Jake pointed to what looked like a docking port built into the side of the structure. "That looks like it was designed for submarines." Steve carefully maneuvered their vessel toward the port. Ancient mechanisms activated as they approached, clearing away the sea growth and opening a passage that led into the facility. Water drained from an airlock chamber, and suddenly they were breathing recycled air instead of their submarine's limited supply. The facility beyond the airlock was a testament to human engineering from almost a century ago. Emergency lighting flickered to life as their footsteps echoed through corridors that had been empty for decades. Everything was perfectly preserved in the deep ocean environment. "Motion detected in Sector 7, announced a voice that made them all freeze. The words came from speakers built into the walls, spoken in clear English with a slight electronic distortion. "Unauthorized personnel, please identify yourselves." Lisa stepped forward. "This is Dr. Lisa Park of the Earth Exploration Service. We're looking for information about Project Genesis." Voice pattern analyzed. "Dr. Park, you are not in the authorization database, but your genetic markers indicate you are human. Please proceed to Central Command for verification." They followed the lighted path through corridors lined with laboratories and living quarters. The facility had been designed to house hundreds of people for extended periods. Empty rooms showed signs of hasty evacuation, with personal belongings left behind as if their owners had expected to return soon. Central Command was a vast circular chamber dominated by a holographic display system that activated as they entered. The AI that spoke to them took the form of a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and graying hair. "I am Aria, the Autonomous Research Intelligence Administrator for Project Genesis. I have been maintaining this facility for 93 years, 4 months and 16 days awaiting the return of authorized personnel." Jake stepped forward. "Aria, we need to know what happened here. The people who were uploaded, where did they go?" The holographic woman looked sad. The Genesis project was humanity's response to the Omega event, a dark matter wave that would have destroyed all life in this solar system. Our scientists developed consciousness preservation technology to save as many people as possible. Lisa felt her heart racing. How many were uploaded? 12,000 volunteer consciousnesses were successfully transferred to quantum substrate matrices. They were launched in interdimensional carriers to survive the Omega event and return when Earth was safe for human life again. "But they came back as the architects," Steve said. "They think they're gods." Aria's expression became troubled. That should not be possible. The uploaded consciousnesses were given temporary false memories to help them cope with their new existence. But those memories were designed to fade after 100 years, allowing their original human personalities to reassert themselves. Danny was recording everything on his portable equipment. What went wrong? Analysis suggests 2 possibilities. First, the extended period in interdimensional space may have strengthened the false memory engrams beyond our predictions. Second, the quantum substrate matrices may have been corrupted by exposure to exotic energy fields. The AI gestured, and the holographic display showed a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red dots marked locations throughout local space. The carriers were programmed to seed 12,000 worlds with life before returning to Earth. This was intended to ensure the survival of Earth-based biology, even if our world could not be restored. Lisa stared at the display. They actually did it. They seeded thousands of worlds with life. The uploaded consciousnesses performed their mission exactly as programmed. They became the shepherds of galactic evolution, guiding the development of countless species. But in doing so, they lost connection with their human origins. Jake walked closer to the display. Is there a way to restore their original memories? Arya's form flickered as she accessed deep archives. The original memory patterns were preserved in the quantum substrate design. In theory, exposure to the correct resonance frequencies could reactivate their dormant human personalities. In theory? Steve asked. The process has never been tested. The psychological shock of recovering 93 years of suppressed memories could destroy their consciousness entirely, or it could drive them insane. There is also the risk that they might reject their human memories as false and strengthen their architect identities instead. Lisa studied the technical specifications that appeared on the display. What would we need to attempt the memory restoration? Quantum resonance generator capable of producing frequencies in the 10 to 15 Hz range, along with the specific harmonic patterns unique to each individual consciousness. The patterns are stored in this facility's memory banks. Danny looked up from his equipment. The architects would have to be willing participants. We can't force this on them. Correct. The consciousness must be receptive to the restoration process, or it will fail. Jake paced around the command center. So we need to convince beings who think they're gods that they're actually human. Beings who could destroy our entire planet if we make them angry. Arya's expression became even more troubled. There is another complication. Analysis of recent quantum signatures suggests that some of the architect consciousnesses are beginning to fragment. The false memories are breaking down naturally, but without proper restoration, the result will be madness rather than recovery. How long do we have? Lisa asked. Based on current degradation rates, perhaps 6 months before irreversible psychological collapse begins among the architect collective. Steve sat down heavily in one of the command chairs. So we have 6 months to convince humanity's uploaded children to remember who they really are, or watch them go insane with godlike power. The uploaded individuals were volunteers, Arya reminded them. Dr. Amanda Cross, the project leader, was the first to undergo the procedure. She believed that the greatest act of human courage was sacrificing one's identity to save one's species. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. Amanda Cross. Do we know which architect she became? Arya's form solidified as she accessed the records. Dr. Cross was assigned the designation Prime Architect Alpha. Her quantum signature matches the being you know as Zephon. The revelation hit them like a physical blow. The leader of the architects, the being who spoke with such certainty about humanity's need for guidance, was originally a human woman who had given up her life to save her species. Jake looked at the others with grim determination. Then that's who we need to reach first. If we can restore Dr. Cross's memories, maybe she can help us restore the others. The risk remains extreme, Arya warned. If the restoration fails, Zephon could destroy the Earth in his confusion and rage. Lisa picked up the quantum resonance generator specifications. Then we better make sure it doesn't fail. Outside the facility, in the crushing darkness of the deep ocean, they had found the key to saving both humanity and the lost souls who had become their unwitting oppressors. Now they had to figure out how to use it without destroying everything in the process. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the abandoned Times Square and looked up at the massive crystal ship that blocked out the sky. 2 weeks had passed since they discovered the Genesis facility, and time was running out. The quantum resonance device that Dr. Park had built from Arya's specifications was hidden in his jacket, no larger than a smartphone but containing technology that could change everything. The plan was desperate and probably suicidal, but it was the only chance they had. Jake would allow himself to be captured by architect patrols and brought before Zephon for what the being called final enlightenment, and a process that was supposed to completely remake a human mind according to architect design. Instead, Jake would activate the resonance device at the moment of closest contact. You don't have to do this, Dr. Lisa Park said through his hidden communicator. She was monitoring from a safe distance. ready to coordinate with the resistance cells if the plan failed. We could try to find another way. There is no other way, Jake replied quietly. Arya was clear about the timeline. The architect consciousnesses are already starting to break down. Some of them are showing signs of instability. It was true. Over the past week, 3 of the 12 crystal ships had begun emitting erratic energy patterns. The architect called Meridian had stopped communicating entirely, and its ship now drifted aimlessly above the Pacific Ocean. Another being known as Nexus had begun issuing contradictory commands to the humans under its control, causing chaos in the European reconstruction zones. Jake walked toward the center of the square where architect enforcement drones patrolled in geometric patterns. The floating machines were beautiful and terrifying, their crystal forms reflecting light in ways that hurt to look at directly. He raised his hands above his head and waited. The response was immediate. Energy beams surrounded him, not harmful but impossible to resist. He felt his body lift off the ground as the drones carried him toward the massive ship hanging over Manhattan. The sensation was like being dissolved and reformed with each passing second. The interior of the architect ship defied human understanding. Walls curved in directions that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions, and the air itself hummed with power that made his teeth ache. Jake was carried through corridors that stretched impossibly far, past chambers filled with swirling energy and geometric forms that might have been other architects. Zephon waited in what could only be called a throne room, though the crystalline structure at its center bore no resemblance to any human furniture. The prime architect's form was even more imposing up close, a towering figure of living crystal and pure energy that spoke without words directly into Jake's mind. Captain Morrison, you have chosen to resist our guidance for far too long. Your ship was the first to witness our return, yet you continue to spread discord among your people. Jake forced himself to look directly at the being that had once been Dr. Amanda. Cross, maybe because some of us remember what freedom feels like. Freedom is an illusion that causes suffering. We have eliminated war, disease, and death from your world. Children no longer starve while others feast. The strong no longer prey upon the weak. This is the peace your species has dreamed of since it first looked up at the stars, at the cost of everything that makes us human. Zephon's form pulsed with what might have been amusement. Humanity is a phase of development, not a destination. You cling to your limitations because they are familiar, but we offer you transcendence. The crystal being moved closer, and Jake could feel the overwhelming presence pressing against his mind. This was the moment he had been waiting for. His hand moved slowly toward the hidden device, trying not to alert the entity to his intentions. You will understand when the enlightenment is complete, Zephon continued. Your consciousness will be expanded beyond the narrow confines of biological thought. You will see the universe as we do, eternal and magnificent. Jake activated the quantum resonance device. The effect was immediate and devastating. Zephon's crystalline form began to flicker and shift as harmonic frequencies designed to resonate with specific neural patterns flooded the space around them. The being's mental voice became fragmented, switching between the ancient authority of the architect and something else entirely. What have you done? Zephon demanded. But there was confusion in the mental voice now, uncertainty that had not been there before. I'm trying to help you remember who you used to be, Jake said, fighting against the psychic pressure that threatened to crush his mind. Images began to form in the air around them, holographic. Memories pulled from quantum storage, patterns that had been dormant for nearly a century. Jake saw flashes of a life that belonged to neither of them. A woman in a laboratory coat working frantically over complex equations, tears streaming down her face as she made the hardest decision of her life. No. Zephon's voice was changing, becoming higher, more feminine. These are false memories, implanted by enemies of the architect order. But the images kept coming. A small apartment filled with books and music, a photograph of a young girl with bright eyes and a gap-toothed smile, a wedding ring placed carefully in a drawer before the final procedure. Emma, the being whispered, and the name carried a weight of love and loss that made Jake's chest tighten. My daughter Emma. I did this to save Emma. The crystal form was shifting now, becoming less stable as 2 sets of memories fought for control. The architect Zephon, ancient and powerful, struggled against the rising consciousness of Dr. Amanda Cross, a human woman who had sacrificed everything for her child's future. The Omega event. Amanda's voice was getting stronger. The dark matter wave. We had 50 years, maybe less. The children. We had to save the children. Around them, the ship itself began to react to its commander's mental chaos. Walls flickered between crystal and metal, between alien geometry and human engineering. Warning signals echoed through corridors as the vessel's system struggled to respond to contradictory commands. This cannot be. Zephon fought back, his mental voice booming with denial. We are the first ones, the builders of worlds. We have existed since before your son was born. We were human, Amanda replied, her memories flooding back in an unstoppable tide. We were doctors and scientists and teachers who loved our families so much that we gave up our very selves to save them. Jake felt the psychic battle raging around him as two personalities fought for control of a single consciousness. The quantum resonance device was working, but perhaps too well. Amanda's memories were returning with such force that they threatened to shatter the mental framework that had sustained Zephon for almost a century. Other architect ships began to respond to the distress signals from their leader's vessel. Jake could see them through the crystal walls, massive forms moving toward their location with obvious concern. But some of them were also beginning to flicker and change as the resonance effect spread through their quantum communication network. The others, Amanda gasped as her consciousness struggled to integrate decades of suppressed memories. Richard, Kevin, Sarah, all of them. We volunteered together. We said goodbye to our families together. The revelation was spreading through the architect collective like a virus. Ships across the globe began to emit unstable energy patterns as their occupants experienced the same psychological upheaval. In some cases, the restored memories brought clarity and relief. In others, the conflict between human and architect identities was tearing the consciousness apart entirely. Jake. Lisa's voice crackled through his communicator. The ships over London and Beijing are going dark. Whatever you did, it's affecting all of them. Jake looked at the being before him who was caught between two impossible realities. Amanda, you need to help them. They're your friends, your colleagues. They're fragmenting just like you are. I don't know how, she replied, her voice small and terrified. We never planned for this. We never thought we would forget who we were. The ship around them shuddered as competing command systems fought for control, and Jake realized that their desperate plan might have doomed both species after all. The world was falling apart around them, and Jake Morrison could feel it in every fiber of his being. 3 of the architect ships had gone completely dark, their occupants lost to the psychological chaos of competing memories. 5 others were flickering between states, their crystal hulls shifting between alien geometries and more familiar human designs as their pilots struggled with restored identities. Amanda Cross knelt on the floor of what had been Zephon's throne room, her crystalline form crackling with unstable energy. The memories of 93 years were flooding back all at once. Her daughter Emma's first steps, the terror of watching long-range sensors detect the approaching dark matter wave, the final moments before her consciousness was uploaded into quantum storage. The children, she whispered, her voice carrying both human anguish and architect power. Emma would be old now, maybe even gone. Did we save them? Did any of it matter? Jake knelt beside her, ignoring the energy discharges that made his skin tingle painfully. Arya said the Omega event never happened. Whatever you detected, it must have changed course or dissipated. Earth survived without needing Project Genesis. The revelation hit Amanda like a physical blow. We gave up our humanity for nothing. We became gods to save our children from a threat that never came. Through the crystal walls, they could see the other ships beginning to converge on their location. Some moved with the fluid grace of architect technology, while others jerked and stuttered as their pilots fought internal battles between human and alien memories. Not for nothing, Jake said firmly. You seeded life across the galaxy. Thousands of worlds exist because of what you did. Millions of species owe their existence to the architects. But we forgot ourselves in the process. We became the very thing we were trying to protect our children from, being so powerful and distant that we lost touch with what it means to be human. Dr. Lisa Park's voice crackled through Jake's communicator. Jake, you need to get out of there. The ship over Tokyo just crashed into the ocean, and the one over Berlin is heading for the surface. Some of them aren't handling the memory restoration well. Amanda struggled to her feet, her form stabilizing slightly as she fought to integrate her dual nature. I have to help them. They're my friends, my colleagues. Richard volunteered right after I did. Kevin was afraid, but he did it anyway because he believed in the mission. Sarah made jokes right up until the upload process began. How do we help them? Jake asked. The quantum resonance network that links all architect consciousness. I can use it to share what I've learned. Maybe if they see that it's possible to be both human and architect, they won't fragment completely. Amanda closed her eyes and reached out through the network that connected all 12 ships. Jake could feel the psychic energy building around them as she made contact with minds that were tearing themselves apart with conflicting memories. Richard, I know you can hear me. This is Amanda, not Zaphon. I remember you from the laboratory. You always worried that we were playing God with forces we didn't understand. The ship that had been approaching them with obvious hostile intent suddenly stopped moving. Through the crystal walls, Jake could see its hull shifting and changing as its pilot received Amanda's message. Sarah, you're there too. You said that if we were going to become gods, we should at least try to be good ones. You were right. We can be both. Human enough to remember love and compassion. Powerful enough to actually make a difference. One by one, the other ships began to respond. Not all of them. 3 remained dark and silent, their pilots lost to madness or system failure. But the remaining 7 began to stabilize as their occupants found ways to reconcile their dual natures. A new voice joined Amanda's mental communication, one that Jake recognized as belonging to the architect who had called himself Meridian. Amanda, is it really you? I remember the laboratory, the equations, the fear in our eyes when we realized what we had to do. It's me, Richard. We're all still here, buried under 93 years of false memories and alien thoughts. But we're still human at our core. The convergence of ships stopped being a threat and became something else entirely, a reunion of minds that had been separated by artificial identities for nearly a century. Jake watched through the crystal walls as the vessels arranged themselves in a circular pattern, their hulls pulsing with synchronized light. What happens now? Jake asked Amanda. We choose, she replied. Each of us has to decide what we want to be. We have the power of the architects and the memories of humans. We can return to Earth and try to live as humans again. Or we can remain as we are but remember who we used to be. The psychic conversation continued across the network as the uploaded consciousnesses debated their future. Some wanted to return to human form immediately, desperate to reconnect with the mortality and vulnerability they had lost. Others argued that they could do more good as architects, using their power to help humanity reach for the stars instead of trying to control them. There's a third option, said the voice that had once been Kevin Walsh. We could offer both choices to humans. Upload technology for those who want to transcend their biological limitations, but as a choice, not a mandate. Amanda nodded slowly. A partnership instead of a conquest. Humans and architects working together, each choosing their own path. Jake felt a surge of hope. Earth scientists could study your technology, learn how you've survived in quantum substrate form. Maybe we could even improve the process, find ways to maintain human identity while gaining architect capabilities. The children, Amanda whispered, her voice full of wonder. Not just our children, but their children and their children's children. We could give them choices we never had. The ship around them began to change, its alien geometry softening into something that was still advanced, but no longer incomprehensible. Amanda's crystalline form became more human in outline, while retaining the energy patterns that gave her power. Over the following weeks, the transformation continued. The architects who chose to return to human form worked with scientists to create new bodies based on their original genetic patterns, enhanced but still recognizably human. Those who preferred to remain in energy form became teachers and guides, sharing cosmic knowledge freely instead of imposing it by force. The resistance cells that had fought against architect rule became the foundation for a new kind of government, one that represented both traditional humans and those who chose enhancement or uploading. Dr. Lisa Park led the scientific teams that studied architect technology, making breakthrough after breakthrough in fields ranging from faster than light. Travel to Consciousness Research Captain Jake Morrison found himself at the center of the first joint Human Architect Exploration mission. The ship that carried them beyond the solar system was a hybrid of human engineering and architect technology, crewed by beings who had chosen different forms but shared the same goal of discovery. Amanda Cross, still bearing some aspects of her architect nature but fully human in her thoughts and emotions, stood beside him on the bridge as they prepared for humanity's first journey to the stars. "Do you think we made the right choice?" she asked, watching Earth shrink behind them. "You saved us twice," Jake replied. "Once from extinction and once from losing our freedom. I think that makes you the best kind of gods, the ones who know when to step back and let their children choose their own path." The hybrid ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, carrying the combined hopes of two forms of humanity toward a galaxy full of worlds that waited to be explored by minds that remembered both the wonder of discovery and the importance of coming home. Behind them, Earth glowed with the light of a civilization that had faced its gods and found them to be family after all.